Well, welcome, Taylor.
Hi.
So, we are going to be talking about a few sensitive topics. Another trigger warning again, just like I mentioned before in my other podcast episode. If this is starting to get triggering, don't feel pressured to listen, pause, take a moment to decompress. Don't even force yourself to continue listening. I don't want this to be like triggering to anybody. I want this more to be like, hey, you're not alone in this journey. And speaking of,
Yeah.
can you share your journey, when it started and how it evolved over time?
Yeah. So I started, I got married to my husband in 2019, and we were thankfully one of the ones who got to do that before COVID because we all know how that like changed the world, changed our lives. Um, we were about a year into our marriage, so I ended up getting pregnant, and we took the time to we waited till I was about 7 weeks, and so we were really excited. My husband's mom was not in the best health space, so we wanted to tell her just as soon as possible to help bring her in on that, which unfortunately that pregnancy didn't work out. It ended up being a miscarriage at 7 weeks, and I think that there is a lot for people to learn about the things that you shouldn't say when somebody goes through that. You know, we try our best to empathize or sympathize with people, whether we have or haven't gone through the same scenarios. And I feel as though I was really surprised that even people that you would think you're really close to in your family would know not to say certain things, but they don't.
They don't.
And
Yeah.
so I learned a lot in that aspect about my healing from that, and that I'm able to know in the future what I would or wouldn't say to someone who's going through the same thing.
Yeah.
We grieve very hard here in the United States whenever something happens. And people are allowed to grieve however they want to, however long they want to. But I feel as though sometimes the way that people approach grief when someone's going through it is from a very uncomfortable, awkward space. We kind of try to tiptoe around those feelings, or we try to say things that we think will comfort the person. Like, for example, it just wasn't meant to be. It wasn't the right time. God has other plans for you. Right. Because whether you do or don't believe in God, it's totally something you want to hear as a mother who's lost something that you wanted so much, of like, this was God's plan for you. Okay, I'm glad you know that. Thanks for reminding me.
Like, love that advice.
I appreciate that you're coming from a place of love and comfort, but it's not doing that for
At
me.
all. It's the worst. It's the opposite. Thank you.
Right. And then for like, I noticed that, of course, people had difficulty talking to me, or even like asking me after the fact, like, are you okay? Do you need help with anything? You know, people don't know really how to go about asking for the ability to help somebody and what they do need. Because especially like those of us who have gone through something like that, I feel like you don't know what you need. And so for someone to come in and say, tell me what you need, it's like, I don't know. How about you just come sit with me?
Please.
Right. Like,
let's just not even talk.
I think that would have been the biggest thing, was that instead of people reaching out and asking me, are you okay? What can I do for you? I'm like, I really am just feeling alone. Even the people that would come in and say, oh, you know, I've been through this. I know how you're feeling. And I'm like, I appreciate the sentiment, but it's not the same.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you why it wasn't for me. So after we told my husband's mother we had the miscarriage, it was literally a day later. So it felt like I had to kind of like take away the joy that I had shared with her, and that really hurt. of course, me going through my own pain that I'm going through and thinking about hers and everybody else's as well. Like, oh, I've built up this lovely dream of a baby that's not going to come for you. And I'm sorry. Suddenly I'm the one, even though I'm going through it, I'm the one apologizing, which I think was trigger here. That was one of the things that I had to really process in counseling after my miscarriage, was being in the hospital. I'm going to get graphic, feeling literal pieces of me falling out.
The pain you feel.
The pain, but also the physicality of like, oh, I feel it, it's coming, it's going, and there's nothing I can do to stop it.
God, yeah, you're making me cry.
So
flashbacks to my stuff.
Right. So in that instance, I remember being in the room and looking at my husband. Of course, I'm the one having a miscarriage, and yet I'm the one looking at him sobbing, saying, I'm so sorry, like it was my fault, and I know it wasn't. But I think as women that we take on that responsibility. And I'm such a big fan of like little blurbs here and there that I pick up from, whether it's podcasts or movies or things that I relate to. In that instance, I relate to Jennifer Lopez in What to Expect When You're Expecting. And there's the moment when she's talking to her husband and she says to him, I'm sorry that I can't do the one thing my body is supposed to do.
Oh my goodness.
So it's like you connect with that when you go through something like that. And I after having our miscarriage, I was already going through a bit of a whirlwind. My husband worked going to different places throughout the state and sometimes even outside of state for jobs. And this particular weekend that I found out I was pregnant, I drove all the way down to Corpus Christi, where he was, to stay with him at the condo for the weekend so that I could share the joy of this pregnancy test positive with him. My dad lived about an hour away from Corpus Christi. So I was like, if I'm going that far, I might as well go see my dad and share my good news with him. And of course, that was whenever I went down, shared the joy with my husband, called my dad, didn't hear from him, waited another day because I had to go back home, and texted him that morning, said, hey, Dad, I'd really like to meet you for lunch. Please get in touch with me. I need to talk with you. Didn't hear back from him. So as I'm driving home, I'm like, okay, he hasn't responded to me in over 24 hours. That's not typically like him. I called my stepmom, and she said, oh, your dad's been in the hospital for a day now. And I was like, okay, what's going on? And long story short, my dad had battled my entire life with alcoholism. And that was something that he really struggled with. I feel like he had a lot of pressure on his plate to be the eldest and look after the others. And he dealt with a lot of pain from the passing of his little brother, from things that he felt like he couldn't live up to, and ways that he was just not proud of himself for things that he did. So I think that alcohol was his numbing. We all numb in different ways. That was his. And so I grew up with my dad being a functioning alcoholic, and not the kind of alcoholic that, like, a lot of times people think like, oh, angry drunk or someone who can't work. That was not my dad. He was a very hardworking man. He loved his family. He very much prided himself on being a provider and someone that me and my sister could look up to. He was always the person asking us, like, what do you need? Do you need anything? Tell me what it is. I'll get it for you. Let me know. And of course, most of the time we didn't take him up on that, because he taught us the pride of earning something for yourself and how important that is to be self-sustaining. So he ended up in the hospital. He had multiple health issues. He was fighting diabetes. He was fighting pancreatitis. Wow. And when he ended up having to stop drinking due to a employment opportunity, he went into withdrawals. because he had been a functioning alcoholic for so
Mm-hmm.
long. Because of that withdrawal, his body didn't know how to respond, and his pancreatitis flared up. He ended up getting septic, where he vomited he vomited and aspirated on that vomit.
Wow.
And it caused him to have to be incubated with a breathing tube. The breathing tube caused him to get pneumonia, and from there it just went downhill. It was literally like an avalanche over the course of a month's
Wow.
time. Mind you, this is all happening just 48 hours after I figured out I'm pregnant. I was planning to tell him.
Mm-hmm.
Now I know he's in the hospital. All of this avalanche went down within the course of a month. And so at this point, I've been pregnant for about the month. I end up telling my husband's mom, we have to, pull back on that info. And I remember the day that I came over to tell her that we had lost the baby. I had a call with my stepmom, and she was telling me how he was still being incubated. They were trying to get him off of the ventilator, and that he just needed time to recover. I had the thought in my head, what am I going to do if I lose my dad? And it didn't seem real, because it wasn't a tangible thought. I'm like, she keeps telling me he's in the hospital. They're doing everything that they can. Like, the thought never occurred to me that I would lose him too. Because it's just unrealistic, especially when you're not there every day to see the gradual decline like she was. Of course, because COVID had started. My stepmom was the only one who could be in the hospital with him. We asked if we could come visit, and they said no. After waiting for that month, it got down to the point where my stepmom said, I hate to say this, but his body's just not getting better. And I think that you girls will realize that when you come to see him. And I didn't want to believe that, so I called the doctor. I talked to the doctor, and the doctor says that he's outside of his multiple issues because he's had the sepsis, he's had the fever, he had experienced brain damage, and his organs were starting to shut down. So I said, okay, tell me realistically, how much of a chance do I have of my dad pulling out of this? He said about 20%, maybe 20%. Less. So I'm going through the motions, I'm like, okay, I've been dealing with this miscarriage for 5 days. Now I have to switch gears, focus on my dad. Mm-hmm. Dad's still here. And I went down there to Rockport, got to the hospital in Corpus Christi. I'm thinking as I'm going up, because I have my husband with me, and of course he can't come. It's literally just the doctors allowed me and my sister to get the visitor passes to come in and see him. And they kept saying, say goodbye. But it hadn't processed yet. It's like in the movies, whenever you think you're going to go up in there, you're going to talk to them, and you're going to see them, and they're going to respond to you. Mm-hmm. And I never thought, walking into that room, that I was going to admit defeat, that my dad was gone, until I saw it. When you see someone that is the epitome of strength for you, someone who works so hard and prides themselves on presenting the best person they can be, that's how he was, to see him in a bed, hooked up to machines, doing the work for his body, and knowing, looking in his eyes, that he was already gone. I just couldn't process that I was walking into that room and really going to say goodbye to my dad, because he wasn't there. We were keeping his body alive, and that's not what he wanted. So, we took the time to have our moments with him. I think I'm still very bitter about COVID, because it's like not only did it take away so much from so many, but it took away the ability for me to see my dad when he was still here, when he was still lucid, before he had been put on a ventilator and induced into a coma. He was there for a few days where I could have seen him, and I wasn't able to. And knowing when I walked in there and saw him that I was going to have to tell him goodbye, and also explain to him that I was pregnant, but I'm not anymore. And I wanted to share that joy with him, and I never got to. My dad was a really big Pink Floyd fan. He was a lover of great 70s and 80s rock. We played the songs that he would have wanted to hear one last time, and we let him go. And the only way that I can describe the pain of losing a pregnancy that you've worked a good year for, dreaming, hoping, like, if I can be candid, like talking to my eggs as if one of them was one day going to be that baby. Like, I know you're in there. I love you. Whenever you're ready, you know. And then to have that, just that built up expectation come crashing down. I was broken. And a lot of what I experienced in that brokenness was love and support from people. And I can't thank people enough for reaching out to me and being there for me the way that they were. But I also got to see the side of grief that I don't think a lot of us think about, which is where we try so hard to say, I know what you're going through. I've been where you are. And for me, you know, I was going through that grief, the stages. I was in the angry stage. I was like, don't tell me that God has a plan for me, because if this is God's plan, it's not a very nice plan. Okay. I would like to think that God loves me more than this. This is not his plan for me, but thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate the sentiment. I struggled for a long time with that, and being that we were still in COVID after my dad passed, first thing I did to join the parade of things we did during COVID, I got a dog.
Yep. I feel like everyone got a dog.
Yeah, I mean, laying on a couch, being so upset with myself that I'm staring at the wall for hours is not constructive. So I started going to therapy. I got a therapist that I did Zoom meetings with, and I asked him, I think that I need something to help get me off the couch. Should I go get a dog? And he said, I think that would be great. So I did. And there were times when I wondered if that was the best decision, because potty training in an apartment with carpet is difficult. Yep. But, you know, now, of course, here we are 3 years later. We just celebrated her 3rd birthday, and we can't love her anymore. It's hard to think about of a time before we had her. Yeah. You know, they just become part of your family.
Yes.
So she was my little, I called her my rainbow pupper. She was my rainbow baby, my first baby after my miscarriage. Yeah. And she is my little shadow. She follows me everywhere. I named her Rei, R-E-I, after Sailor Mars, Rei Hino. I'm a big Sailor Moon fan. Yeah. So being that I definitely identify with Sailor Moon, because food, sleep, I'm a crybaby. We're a lot alike. Yeah. She's my best friend, so Rei. Yeah. And there was also the trouble that comes from the type of relationship you have with your partner, because although it feels like it's just you going through the miscarriage, they go through it too. Yeah. And we all try to think about how we're going to go through difficult things in our lives together with our partners, and the expectation of it's going to make us stronger. We're going to go through this together. But you don't realize it until you're going through it, that like they're going to grieve how they're going to grieve, and it may not be at the level you're at.
Yep. And you get angry sometimes.
Right. You're like, why aren't you in this with me? Yeah. Why do I feel so alone, but we're going through this together? Yeah.
But they grieve differently, especially
Exactly.
males. They grieve differently,
Yes.
but you're like, why aren't you crying? Why aren't you doing the same things I'm doing?
Right.
Like, you didn't care.
Yeah.
And then you
I
anger.
mean, like
Yeah.
the day after, I stayed home, of course, but my husband was like, "Do you care if I go to work?" And I was like, "Well, I'd rather you be here with me, but if you think that's the best decision for you, then yeah, you should go."
Yeah.
And of course, he didn't make it through the day, but I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt. I'm like, go do your thing.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be here trying to deal with mine.
Yeah.
So he told me that it was about halfway through the day that he pulled up a text message to check in on me, asked me how I was doing. And the first thing in that message thread was a onesie that I had sent to him. The last one that I said, "This is for her."
Yeah.
So, just moments like that remind you that although you're going through this with someone, you have to give them the space to go through it for themselves too. And that can be hard, especially when you're feeling really alone and you're like, we're supposed to be going through this together.
Yeah. We're supposed to grieve at the same level. Like, why aren't you grieving the same way?
Yeah. So I think that caused us a lot of stress and a lot of pain, especially for my husband. It broke his heart too, watching me go through that, knowing that the joy, because he's always wanted to be a dad. Like you ask guys what they've always wanted to be. They're like a firefighter or a space engineer, whatever. I mean, I've always asked my husband, what do you want to be when you grow up? And he's like, I want to be a dad.
Aww.
So it's just like, for me, it was even harder because it felt like it was the one thing that I couldn't give to him that he's wanted for so long.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of why, as I was in the hospital, sitting there apologizing to him, I think that was why. It was like, it felt like, even though it was out of my control, I was taking away his dream too.
Like, and that's another thing. Why do we beat ourselves up?
Right. Of course, I knew it wasn't my fault, but I didn't.
But it's just like, it's like nature. Like, it's part of us. Like, we beat ourselves up even more.
Oh, I'm the biggest beater-upper of myself.
And we worry about what other people
critic.
think and like how they're reacting and all the things. And it's like, you really need to focus on yourself and grieve and go through it. But then at the same time, you're thinking about your husband, everyone that you told. And it's like, it's even more pressure on you.
Yeah.
And more grieving and more sadness.
And it's so much easier for us to focus on the things that we can do outside of ourselves for other people.
Yeah.
Especially when we're in that caretaker mentality, and I definitely grew up with that mentality of like, it's my job to take care of the people I love because if they're happy, I'm happy. But of course, when we get into that kind of state of grief, you learn very quickly that happiness is not going to be found outside of yourself. You have to find it in here first.
Yep.
And everything that I went through between the miscarriage and my dad, it really sent me on it felt like a catapult had been shot off inside of me of like, okay, I need to stop trying to continue living in this cycle of grief. I need to find a way to pull myself out of this in a positive way and use it to help other people, because that's all it can do. We go through mistakes, we learn from those mistakes. And I would hope that if what I went through and the wisdom that I gained from that painful journey could help someone else navigate theirs, that makes it worth it.
Yeah.
So I started doing what I know my dad would have wanted me to do or never got to do for himself, which was just focus on myself, focus on therapy, really focus on committing to learning about myself. What are my flaws? What are things that I love about myself and things I'd like to change? So I dove into that. I have ADHD, so I got hyperfixated on a lot of things because we had the time. I got hyperfixated first on Brene Brown.
Oh, I love her.
She is such a role model and inspiration to me. The things that she has come out with from her emotional research side has just helped me really understand the focus on feelings and being able to understand ourselves and the ways that we feel, and giving ourselves the grace that we give to everybody else when we're hurting, when we're low, when we're feeling like the mom guilt, all of those things that aren't our fault, but feel out of our control. And then because it's out of our control, we feel alone, and we forget that there are so many other people going through the same thing, but nobody wants to talk about it.
Yep.
So why not? Let's talk about it. Because if we could, that was one of the things I learned when it came to my miscarriage, was nobody wants to talk about it. And it's like, if I had known that 1 in 4 women will have a miscarriage, I would have recognized that I wasn't so alone.
Yeah. No one talks about it. And I think that's what I struggled with, because I had 2 miscarriages back to back, one in December that I announced to the entire world. Again, that expectation, you get super excited. You're like, oh, they're going to be born around this time, which means
You're already planning their life.
Their whole life.
Yeah.
And I was like, and then Grayson will be in school, and it's perfect. It's perfect. Then we'll hire a night nurse. I started talking to night nurses, all the things. And again, you have that expectation. And I was so excited because it was something that I really, really, really wanted for months. And it just happened out of the blue. And I remember at the time, again, super excited, told the whole world. I had people say, don't tell anybody, keep this to yourself.
Yeah.
And I was just like, but why?
There's that doubt in the back of your mind because they've experienced it too.
Yeah. And so I was like, but I'm so excited. Like, I want to announce.
Just want to share your joy.
Yeah. And it was Christmas time.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is perfect. My little gift, all the things. And I remember at the time, I had a lot of friends prior to that, and going through the miscarriage, you realize who's truly there and who's truly not. Because genuine friendships aren't just about, hey, come over, let's drink, or let's go out and party.
Right.
Like, those are your party friends. Those are people that are bored and they want to hang out with you. So I realized a lot during my miscarriage, and I was angry, like so angry. And I was angry because my husband was grieving a different way than I was. Every time that I thought I was going to do better, I would get packages in the mail of like onesies and things that people were sending to us. Yeah, because they're like, oh, your bundle of joy, like, how exciting, here's a little gift, and they had already sent it before I announced, like, hey, I miscarried. And so I was opening up packages that I thought, or the stuff I ordered.
Yeah.
And I open and I see the onesies and the cute little Harry Potter outfits and all the cute little things, and broke down again, and it's like,
it comes in the waves.
Yeah, it comes in the waves. And it was so hard because at the end of the day, you still have to be a mom. And I remember Josh just like being the strong one. Like, he was like, I'm going to hide all of this stuff. Like, I'm not going to throw it away because,
one day,
like, let's stay positive. Like, it will happen again. And I was just so frustrated. And I remember going to the doctor because no one talks about it. And then when you do talk about it, people are like, ooh, I'm going to stay away from you because you're kind of like in a grieving stage and I just don't want to deal with it. Like, that's kind of their mentality. Like, give me a call when you're like done grieving.
It's uncomfortable for them to be around you and your sadness.
Yeah. And they just don't know how to deal. So they'd rather not deal with it at all.
Right.
So they disappear, which makes you even more sad because you're even more alone. And you're like, how do I get out of this? And I remember going to my doctor and, again, really frustrated. And I said this in another episode, but when I went, they found out I was pregnant again. And she was not happy, because you're
supposed to wait a little while.
Yeah, again, things I never knew. So I was like, oops, whatever. And super, super excited. But then I was like, I could sense it that it was just not going to go through again. But I remember her telling me that she wished more women were open with their pregnancies, not only with announcing their pregnancy, but announcing the miscarriages. Yeah. Like, announcing, like, this is what happened. This is how I'm feeling. And this is what I'm doing to work through it.
If it was more common for people to talk about, it would be easier for women to feel like they don't have something to hide.
Yep. Or feel ashamed that it happened. Or it happened again. Like, like, dang it, something's wrong with me.
Because this was totally in my control.
Yeah, totally. Like, and it sucks. And people, again, don't know how to handle when someone's grieving. And it's hard. And I have a friend that, she is currently still grieving from the death of her son. And I'm ashamed to even admit this. I was one of the ones that, like, once it happened, I just did not know what to do.
Right.
And so I backed away.
What do you say?
Yeah. What do you say? And especially in a situation like that, you're just like, you've said what you had to say. And then it's like, I don't know what to do. Like, literally, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. I don't want to say the wrong thing.
And when we get to that place, I really feel like one of the superpowers I feel like I got for myself going through my awareness and growth journey that I pushed myself into, it was a matter of recognizing that it's not about saying the right thing when someone's going through hell. It's about sitting there in that with them.
Yeah.
So they're not
alone.
You can sit in silence for an hour with your friend, holding their hand, getting them a cup of tea, making sure they're bundled up on the couch. You could say nothing, but just being there is what makes the difference.
It makes a huge difference. Like, and I don't think people truly know that until they grieve themselves. And even then, people grieve in different ways and they require different things. But one of the common things, and even with my time in grief, I like needed the first miscarriage. I just needed someone to be here.
Right.
You know, and Josh was here, but, you know, he had to go back to work and I was stuck with Grayson. And so it was just hard for me. And then I just really genuinely just wanted someone here. And people would message me and they'd be like, what do you need? What do you want? How can I help? Yeah. And I'm just like, what? And again, it's back to the point where you're saying, like,
I don't know what I need.
I honestly don't know.
What can you offer?
Yeah. And it's like, a coffee? I don't know. Like, you don't, when someone's grieving, they're only thinking about grief. They're not thinking about the other things, you know? And
their needs are at the bottom of the totem pole. So asking them, what do you need? It's not helpful.
Not.
As much as the love and support is there,
it's not.
There's not much it does.
It doesn't do anything. And it actually, at least for me, it added more stress.
Yeah.
Because then I was like, what?
You're asking something of me and I don't have an answer
at all. And I was like, I don't want to be rude, but I'm just like, I don't know what I need, you know? And then people started getting weird and disappearing, but you don't know. And I remember one person, she, you know, obviously she was aware that I miscarried. She probably had miscarriages all the time, unfortunately, but she had kids. And I remember she messaged me and she was like, I'm coming over to your house on Thursday at this time. And you can do whatever you want. But I'm going to be there and I'm bringing you a coffee. And
that's a great friend.
That's what, like, this is what I'm doing for you. She never asked me what I needed.
Less about, hey, tell me what you want versus I'm going to do this for you and give you an opportunity to
do whatever.
Whether it's a bubble bath, hide in the closet, or go drive around the neighborhood.
Yeah. And cry.
Whatever that is.
Whatever it was. And she was like, literally, you can do whatever you like. And so I was like, okay. But it was what I needed. Because I remember that day, like, I went for a drive, I went shopping, and I cried, and then I went shopping some more, you know, like, I did the things, and I came back, and I was just like, I got this. Like,
you need time to process, and as a mom
you don't have
who's putting all their energy into a little human that needs them to be fully focused, you don't have time to process that
at all.
And until it gets to nighttime, and then you feel guilty because how much time did you spend not thinking about what's been killing you on the inside while you're trying to take care of the person that still needs you.
Yeah. That loves you unconditionally, that's here. And it's hard. And you're right, because, like, I grieved for so long, and I'm still grieving. I, like, again, it comes in waves. But as a mom, you're doing so many things as is.
Yeah.
You know, you're grocery shopping, you're doing all the things, and then something like this happens, and it's your whole world, like you said, is shattered.
Right.
You are not a person. You're not even here. Like, I felt like I wasn't even here. And I was like, I don't think I would ever be able to get out of this funk that I'm feeling. And I remember every little moment I had to myself was just crying and crying. Like, the amount of tears I cried, like, it was just my face was swollen, like, all the time. And a lot of people don't know how to handle it. Josh, you know, at one point he was like, babe, I really don't know what to do. Like, please tell me. Like, but it was genuinely like he was concerned, like he wanted to help. And I just didn't have an answer for him. And I remember talking to my therapist about it because, again, certain situations had happened. And she was like, grief has no timeline. There is no timeline on grief. And if someone's telling you that you need to hurry up and get over this grief, like, those are people you should not be talking to. And one of the things people kept saying to me was, this is all part of God's plan. And go back to that is like, this is fucked up. Like, sorry, it's fucked up. Like, back-to-back miscarriages, like, fucked up, you know? And I was just so angry the entire time. I went from anger to sadness, and hearing people, or not even hearing people messaging me and saying, again, but it came all from good intentions. It came from a good place, but it would just piss me off even more. And I was just like, y'all don't know what I'm going through. And then not only are you grieving, but you're like in literal pain. Like in extreme pain.
And you're waiting for the day that you stop bleeding. Because it's just another reminder.
It's just constant reminder. And I remember it was 2 weeks for me for it to like fully like process out of me. And it was the most painful experience I felt like of my life, mentally and physically. And again, people just they don't know. And then people would make you feel bad because they're like, miscarriages happen all the time. It's okay.
What's the big deal?
What's the big deal? Like, it's so common. And I'm like, but
is it if we're not talking about it?
Yeah.
And that's the problem.
Exactly. And I'm like, if it's so common, why aren't we more open to it? Why isn't anyone talking about it? Why are we telling women to wait 12 weeks to announce a pregnancy because we don't know if they're going to miscarry? We don't want to be uncomfortable. We don't want to deal with that uncomfortableness. And it's like, let a woman be.
And I think that's why everyone can decide what's best for their pregnancy journey. I know people who have been afraid to announce a second time. I was definitely part of that train. So when we did get pregnant again, it was actually right about a year later. And, you know, being that we lost the first baby, it really did a number on my husband. It got to a place for him where he just wasn't sexually driven.
Wow.
You know,
it was too much.
It's like, it was just like, it wasn't something on his brain anymore. It had hurt so much that the idea of going through it again was just not part of his current plan. And that creates frustration between a partner, a married couple, whenever one wants something and it's like, okay, I know we went through this, but let's try again. And the other one's like, nope. I don't think so. I'm not there yet. And you get frustrated, you have resentments, and I'm sitting there trying to, for a good 6 months, just working on him like, hey, I don't know what's going on. I don't know where your mojo went. Do you still want to have kids? He'd say yes. I'm like, okay, then what's the problem? He's like, I don't know. So out of turn of frustration over the course of a year, and this being a continuing problem, I decided to make a plan for us to go on a staycation kind of thing for our anniversary. I ended up getting us like a hotel in Marble Falls. We ended up going out and doing some really fun stuff in Fredericksburg, and spent too much money shopping. And we had a good weekend. And I decided that Saturday night, like, we've had such a hard journey going through these past 2 years. We're now at a year again since we lost the baby. And for me, I think the hardest part about that miscarriage, outside of the connection with my dad, was that being that I lost it so early, there's a lot of people that are like, well, it happened so early. It's not like anything really was there. But that was the thing. For me, it was literally like, I felt like my body was gaslighting me. I remember finding a post that said, I didn't get to see you, and I'll never get to hold you. But those 2 lines you gave me were everything.
Oh, God.
And for me, that was all I had. For 2 years, I kept the pregnancy test until the digital pregnancy plus was gone. And I was like, okay, this is now just a stick I peed on. There's nothing there left for me. But I think that was part of what was hard, was something I wanted so much, I didn't even have any proof that it happened.
Yeah.
Outside of that stick. I never got to see an ultrasound.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't, and not that I would have wanted any other outcome, because it's just as traumatic for someone who gets further along in a pregnancy and loses a child.
Mm-hmm.
But some people get the opportunity to have a DNC and get to see the baby, to know the sex. I didn't get any of that.
No.
It literally felt like I had no proof that I was ever pregnant, and all I was left with was the pain and the dream, the idea, the idea of you and who you could have been.
Yeah.
And I often think about that. I think about my son now, who's 2, and I'm like, just thinking that if we had had that baby, that I would have a 3-year-old and a 2-year-old, and how different life would be, And I saw something on Facebook the other day on Mama Talk. It's a great, great page that I follow. She said, "How wonderful will it be when you get to heaven and hear a little voice say, 'Mama'?"
Oh, you see, that's what gets me, because I think it was my mother-in-law that said that, something very similar to that. And she just broke me, because I was just like, she was like, you will meet them eventually.
Right.
And so I was like, yeah, I know, but it's like, I wanted to meet them now, or 9 months from now, or whatever the thing is. But it's hard when you imagine the things. Like, it's still hard for me to pass by like the newborn, sections of the stores and all the things. But yeah, it's exciting to know that we'll eventually meet up again.
And I loved that idea. When I was letting my father go, I had to cling on to the hope that maybe the reason for that miscarriage was because that little soul was supposed to help guide him to his next part of his journey.
Oh my goodness.
And I told him, as I let him go, I said, "Daddy, I know that this didn't work out this time. And I hope that when the time is right, you will send me my grandbaby. And you'll pick the perfect one. I know you will." And so a year later, it was our anniversary, April 28th, and I went to bed that night thinking, we've come this far, and nothing has come to fruition. I'm tired of creating stress for us and for myself for something that is just not happening right now. I'm going to accept that maybe being a mother isn't for me. Maybe the expectation that I've created of this is what will happen for me is not my journey, and that I should be open to other options. There is adoption, there's fertility, and everybody can have their own options for their journey. I was just tired of focusing so hard on the one that I continued to get disappointed. So I said, I'm going to go to bed tonight, and there's no more pressure. We're going to stop trying. We're just going to live our life. We don't have babies, so we're going to go travel. We're going to do things with each other this year and focus on reconnecting. And woke up the next morning. We went to the Oasis for breakfast, and we were supposed to go out and do things, but I was feeling unusually tired. I told my husband, I was like, I really wanted us to go out and do more stuff, but I feel like I just need to go to sleep. And I thought it was very odd, because I'm a very energetic person. I asked him, can we go home early? And he's like, yeah, totally. So we get home. I go to sleep. It's like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and I didn't wake up till probably 5. I'm like, I'm going to take a nap. Went more like to sleep. And I woke up and I'm like, God, that was a hard sleep. What is wrong with me? I'm still so tired. I thought, no. I went to the bathroom, took that pregnancy test, popped right up.
Wow.
Plus as can be.
Yeah.
Even in an afternoon pee, I was like, all right,
that's
there it is.
Wow.
And I went and I told my husband, and he's like, cool. And I'm like, all right.
Like, yay.
If you're happy, I'm happy.
Yeah.
So, being that it was a year later, and then after we figured, we got through our milestones, we ended up getting the due date, and our son was actually born on my dad's little brother's birthday. So 1/11/22, which if you equate that, those are angel numbers. Wow. 1 1 1 1 1.
Yeah.
So he really is my little angel. We went through our own kind of hell to get him, but I now have my 2-year-old son, Asher, and he is the sweetest, funniest little boy. He loves to dance. He loves to sing. He's obsessed with Danny Go right now. And if you haven't seen him, you should. He's got great songs. And he's our little joy. And I remember when I was going through that grieving process with my dad and trying to get through the confirmation of wanting to keep him feeling close, but also moving along through my own journey, I dreamt of him a lot. And I say I dreamt, but I feel like it was more like visits. I'm a firm believer in that there is another side, and that there are little holes in heaven, little moments where those spirits can come and give us messages or energy that we need to know that they are there, that they support us. I dreamt of my dad more than once, but the first time was, I think, the most powerful because it was right after he had passed, about a month after. And I still had a lot of questions. I asked, I remembered in my dream, it sounded like I was on my phone listening to voicemails, but then I heard my dad's voice, and it wasn't a voicemail, it was him on the line. And he started talking to me, and I said, "Dad, I have a question for you." And he kind of like cut me off and said, "No, we're not going to talk about that right now." And I'm like, no, just please wait for 1 second and let me ask you. I was going to ask him, "Did you know?" in relation to my pregnancy, because of course, holding his hand and telling him that I was pregnant while I could tell his mind was already gone, but his body was just still holding on because of machines. I told him, and in this dream, I asked him, "Did you know?" But again, he cut me off before I said the word no. So I said, "Did you?" And he said, "I know everything." Wow. And I just woke up feeling so relieved. Relieved that he knew what I had gone through, that he heard me, and that he was still present when I need him.
He's watching over you.
Absolutely.
Supporting you.
He would never leave me. And I recognize a lot of that in the same, of course, my son is a fan of Bluey, so we're a Bluey household.
Yep.
And one of my favorite episodes is Sleepy Time, because it always makes me think of my dad.
Oh my goodness. Grayson, that's Grayson's favorite episode. We even got the book. It's Sleepy Time. Anyway, sorry, continue.
But, and it's funny because there's a lot of the fan theories, but one of those theories is that if you watch the episode again, you'll see that there's the sun, and then there's another planet before Bingo comes out of Earth. And it is like it's supposed to be Mercury, and it's broken, but there's no one there, right? It's kind of like supposed to be a clue into the fact that Chili had a miscarriage before Bingo. So I love that idea, and the whole part of her being catapulted through space from the warmth of her mother's love, and telling her, like, "I'm a big girl, I have to go now." And watching that for the first time without my dad, I'm just like, he's not here, but I'm a big girl. And I have to do this on my own. And to hear Chili say, "No matter where you go, I'm always with you."
Yep. That episode just killed. I feel like all the episodes,
they all have a very big undertone. Very, very adult, but very I love it.
But the kids love it too. But I sit here and I'll watch it, and I think the one that gets me a lot is when it's the episode where she's with Bluey, and it's like a competition for her, and she's like competing with the other moms, and she's like, Bluey will do this first, and this, and we're that. And I remember at the end of it, because that was when I was in a phase of like, Grayson's behind, there's competition everywhere. Like the moms were like, my kid can do this, and I felt like Grayson wasn't meeting, those milestones, at least in my brain.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the end of the episode, I don't know who comes up, but she has like 8 kids or something like that.
Right.
So she's experienced that. And she just like gives her a hug and she's like, "You're doing great, Mama.
Doing a great job."
Yeah. And I was just like, "Thank you." Like I felt like she was here like telling me that I was doing a great job. And I literally
just keep
cried.
doing what you're doing.
Yeah. And it cried, tears, and Grayson just staring at me like, what is this girl's deal? Like, why is she crying? And I was just like, it's so, but Bluey really gets to you. And then Sleepy Time was one of those where I saw the fan theories and then I keep watching it because Grayson loves Bluey. He'll watch it over and over again. And I'm just like, man, this is a really good episode. And I cling to the theory of like, yeah, she had a miscarriage and, Bingo and Bluey are still there and, she'll always be there for them. And it's just like, it's a good one. If you guys aren't into Bluey, y'all should really watch Bluey. It teaches you a lot of stuff.
And definitely confirms your feelings as a mom, as a dad, for the things that you go through together as parents, but also even without, because there's so many single moms, or even moms with partners that feel like single moms because we're the default parent and we run things.
Oh yeah.
So I've definitely connected with that at times, and I appreciate that the creators of Bluey would create something that the kids can watch, but also makes a good connection for the adults and makes them feel seen.
Yeah, it's a great episode. And I mean, it's a great show, period. And I love seeing, I think Grayson's up. Let me go grab him real quick. But yeah, I feel like Bluey is such a great show. Oh, I'm so tired.
It's my favorite part is the snuggles.
Oh, yeah. Hi. Yeah.
I know we've never met, but I feel like I know you already.
All the photos.
Yeah.
But yeah, the snuggle. I feel like Grayson did help me too with the miscarriages because the snuggles, man. Like, and he's just so cute about it. And I'm like, man. But then sometimes I see him and I'm like, aw, having like a little brother or sister that looks just like you. It's crazy.
But I definitely, I think that some things that I'd like to give for material for people, that if you're looking for something that's going to be in the therapy realm and you want to kind of get into those psychological aspects, learning about yourself. I'm a big personal development and growth kind of person. I feel like I really got that from Brene. Just learning to understand yourself and recognize the things that you want to do better as a human being, as a friend, as a mother, as a wife, and recognizing how important it is to give yourself time to love yourself, to care for yourself the way that you would care for someone else you love. Because if you don't take care of you, sorry, but ain't nobody else going to do it.
Nope.
And so in order to give your best self, you have to take care of you first.
Yeah, which is hard.
Right. As a mom, absolutely.
Because you're constantly, again, putting your needs last. But it's definitely important. I say that all the time. Self-care, doing whatever you need to do, you got to do it. Like,
so when it comes to that, I recommend, Brene Brown was the first thing that helped me kind of get myself into that mindset of understand yourself, take care of yourself, love yourself. Rupi Kaur, I might be saying her name wrong. I apologize if I am, but she's a poet, and she has a 3-book series.
Hey, don't you touch it. Come here.
Seen it, Mom. We love that. She has a 3-book series, and one of those books in particular I loved, which is called Homebody. She goes through this journey. The first book she talks about is Milk and Honey, which is a book about her trauma that she experienced as a teenager.
Snippets,
and then The Sun and Her Flowers is the one where she really, I might have gotten those two mixed up, but the second book is about her exploring her sexuality, coming into her like sexual pleasure place as a woman, and recognizing all of what that does for her in a relationship, heartbreak. And then the last one, Homebody, is about recognizing that home is not a place, it's a person, and it's you. You are home. Your body is home, and that's why we have to treat it with such respect and love and kindness.
Wow.
Because home starts with you. You are the homemaker. You make the home. So when you can take care of your body the way that you would your home, it makes everything fall into place.
That's a good one. I feel like I'm still struggling with that, and still got to do some self-improvement on my end, because you were talking about, you identified your flaws and what you can improve on. And I don't think anyone really sits down and thinks about it.
I don't think you'll like that if you try it.
He's like, no. Because no one sits down and really is like, am I going to talk about my flaws? No, nothing's wrong with me. But there's always, no one's perfect.
Sure. So when it comes to that, one thing that I really dove into obsession-wise was the Enneagram. If you haven't heard of it.
Oh, yeah.
So a lot of people have heard of it, but they don't really know what it's about. And some people would say it's the same as like, astrological signs or whatever. But for me, it helped. It was helpful because it was a system to like basically give you a number that describes your personality as a person, but at your core, it describes your deadly sin, your motivations, your fears, and it does describe your flaws as a person when you're in a healthy and unhealthy state.
Yeah.
So when I'm in an unhealthy place, I turn, because I'm a 4, the 4 is the caregiver. So in order to, as a caregiver, in order to give to people, I take care of others before myself, because that's how I can distract myself from what I'm really feeling.
Grace, there's so many other toys to play with, but motherhood has its finest.
Hey, construction. It's really cool. But the Enneagram, I recommend that. I took my quiz on, I'll have to provide you with a link, but, and there's no one way to figure out your number. You have to do your own research and figure out which one matches the best for you. But I really got into a preacher who uses the Enneagram in his teachings and counselings with his people in his congregation. He is a Enneagram specialist. His name is Ian Cron. And the way that he describes the Enneagram is that it's like a mirror that shows you where the cracks are within yourself and the tools to fill those cracks.
Wow.
So
I feel like I should do that.
I recommend that. I can give you a book recommendation. I have it.
Yeah.
It's great. And then if you want, thank you so much. That's cool. Therapy podcasts, I'm a big fan of. I really loved, there's Unlocking Us by Brene Brown. She has people to come on there and talks about so many wonderful things. Then there's also Therapy Talks, which is just like 20-minute little blurbs. You can literally listen to them in the car on your way to work and have a moment to reflect and think about things that, you might want to work on for yourself. And I just really think that that kind of personal development work is good for people to reflect on, so that we can be conscientious of the things that we get stuck on that not many people, I feel like, talk about. I get really introspective, and I'm that person who has a I guess what I'm trying to get to is attachment. There's attachment theory, where we have different types of attachment, and you can Google those types of quizzes too. But if you find your type of attachment, it can make the difference in how your relationships are formed with your friends, with your lovers, with everyone.
Wow.
So I found out that I have an anxious avoidant attachment.
What does that mean?
So anxious avoidant meaning that like I'm stressed with anxiety all the time. I consistently need I need my husband to remind me that he loves me, because if he doesn't, I'm going to ask him, do you love me? Why do you still love me? Like I need that. I need the words of affirmation to remind me that you're still interested in me, that you love me, and that you're not upset with me, that I didn't do something wrong.
Yeah.
And that's why you're not talking to me kind of thing. And I recognize that's a problem within myself, but it's something that I am aware of. So I continue to work on it.
Yeah.
My husband, meanwhile, is anxious avoidant. So whenever I have an issue and I'm like very direct and I can be aggressive about it. I'm like, hey, this is a problem to me. Let's talk about it. And he's like, I'm not in the mind space to talk about that, and walks the other direction.
Oh, wow. That's me. I'm like, I don't want to talk about it right now.
Yeah.
Or I shut down.
Right. So literally like you put up the wall. Yeah. And he does the same thing, which is why we are on two different sides of the spectrum, which makes our communication difficult sometimes. But that's why we go to marriage counseling and we go to therapy to figure out, and we're getting better at communicating. I recognize that he needs more time to think about answers than I do. And I need him to be more aware of my needs when I do present them, of like, I'm not telling you you're doing something wrong or that you're bad, but I am presenting you with the things that I'm worried about. So if you could consider those when you're doing these things, it would make me feel more included in your daily thought process, you know?
Yeah. Man, I feel like we should really do it, because I just noticed that with Josh and I, like, we're working on communication. Good job, bud. But we're both very different on how we
journey that I've made, learning about myself. The last thing that I've done in the past year with my son is going into shadow work.
Okay, what's that?
So shadow work into like the dark parts of yourself, and you can recognize the dark parts of yourself that you don't like and still learn to work with and love those pieces. Then you can integrate that into your life instead of trying to hide it. Okay. In the instance of, for me, it's about reconnecting with my inner child. I feel like I've gotten to do that a lot with Asher since he's at that age of play, you know, being a 2-year-old, he's in such a warm place of receiving play and receiving praise. He does really well with like pleases and thank yous, but I love seeing the growth of play that he's at, and I want to be part of that. Yeah. So I've been working for the past year on going back to recall difficult things that happened in my childhood so that I can reconnect with that little girl and basically reparent her in the idea of like, okay, this happened to you and it left you feeling this kind of way. We can still resolve those feelings by going back and saying, hey, little Taylor at 7 years old.
What happened? I feel like that's what I'm doing to you now, because I had a lot of childhood trauma, and having a kid really helps with that.
It does. And you don't want to pass down that generational trauma. And that for me was a big thing. I wanted to, you know, I was spanked as a kid, and people do what they're going to do. Yeah. But for me, it's not what I want to do with my child. I want to have an open dialogue. I want him to feel as though he can talk about his feelings and not have to hide them. Yeah. And we can take time to decompress and understand why we're mad or sad or having certain feelings that are hard to process.
I'm so sorry. This is not how interviews usually go. He's usually sleeping, but he decided to wake up early today.
Yay! Hey, but this is, you know, I saw a girl the other day at the park who had a tattoo that I really think I want to copy. Best form of flattery. She had a tattoo on her arm that said, "Embrace the chaos." Oh yeah. And I'm just like, you know what? It's going to happen. We might as well embrace it. Just live in the moment. Yeah. And like we talked about, don't let expectations kill your joy.
That's a good one. I feel like everyone has these really high expectations for everything. And then again, when it doesn't happen, it really brings you down. Yeah. But it's hard not to. Like, I'm very OCD.
Of course.
I'm a planner. I am to be like, you know, this way. So when it's out of my control, I lose my mind. I'm like, what in the world?
I was talking with my hubby about what does a vacation look like for you? And I'm like, okay, we're going to go to this beach. We're going to go to this zip line. We're going to go to this spa afterward. Like, I've got it every 3 hours. We're at a place. Yeah. And he's like, that sounds awful.
Yeah. Josh is the same way, because he's like, let's go be spontaneous and go do something. And I'm like, yeah, this was last minute, very spontaneous. I don't like that. We need a plan. Like, we should have done this like days ago. Like, it should have been on the calendar and like all the things. And he's like, you really need to work on being spontaneous. I'm like, yeah, I'm trying.
No, my husband's like, my idea of a vacation is going somewhere and being able to decide whether we want to go to the spa or stay in the hotel and order room service and lounge around in our robes.
Josh is just like, I don't want to think. I don't want to do anything. I just want to like go with the flow. And I'm like, no, we can't.
Yeah, no, I'm like, I want to go do all the things that I couldn't do if I was at home.
Yeah. And I want to try all these restaurants and I want to go here and I want to go there and I want to go from this time to this time. And it's like, so.
But I can wrap all that up to say that I think it's important for us moms while our kiddos are at this stage to really take advantage of the opportunity for play, the opportunity to correct that generational trauma and fix the things that we don't want to pass down to our kiddos that you never got to do when you were a kid that you've always wanted to do. Like, I'm sure you guys have noticed my hair color. This is what I wanted to do as a child. I wanted to be like mermaid hair. So now as an adult, I'm like living her dream. You know what? 6-year-old Taylor is in love with her hair. And I am too.
I did that
at almost 33.
I did that when after Grayson was born. I was like, I'm going to dye my hair. And I used to do it a lot back in the day. And I was like, I'm going to do it again, you know, just because. And I showed up and I had like bright pink hair. And Josh was just like, what is going on? And I was like, I have no idea. We're working through it. And this is what my brain told me would make me feel better. So I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
And sometimes I get that moment because I'm like, I'm going to go dye my hair again.
Why our brain tells us we need to change our hair, I don't know, but it's a thing.
Yeah, it really is. And I'm like, I want to cut it short. I want to do all the things. And then once I'm over whatever I'm going through, I'm like, okay, thank God I didn't make that decision.
Right.
Because, you know, I'm just not, I should not be making decisions on my hair.
But
I regret it all the
time.
I
think it's so important for us to reconnect with that little girl inside of us. And there are different, I feel like, ages for us to connect with. So remember the times where you were very imaginative and play. Go play the things that you would play with your son. If there's something that you wanted to do, like dye your hair or get your nails done, go to the spa, any of those things that you wanted to do that you couldn't do as a kid, do those things for yourself as an adult and allow that little girl inside of you to get to do the things that she always wanted to, because you have the ability. Why not treat her with the same love that you would treat your baby?
It's true though. Like I was telling Josh, because you know I'm doing all the things now for 2024, and I was like, the reason why I'm doing this is because the last time I was genuinely happy was when I was in middle school, and I was doing like all these different things, and I just had a vision. Like I just knew what I wanted to do, and I was like, I'm redoing that to find my joy, and you know, it's just a process. Like I have to work through it, and I have to figure it out. But this is what I'm going to do. And he's like, okay, whatever. Like. You know, and again, I was volunteering. Like my joy came from volunteering and like helping other people.
That's awesome.
Like I don't know why. It's just like it brought me joy. Yeah, and party planning and doing all the things. So yeah, and I know we touched on grief and we talked about like what you shouldn't say. You don't say that. But and we talked about, you know, just coming and sitting down with us or like just something. What's one thing that really like helped you through that grief journey that someone said or something that you read?
Yeah. So I think something that really helped me through that time was I actually joined a Facebook group for moms that had that were going through like trying to conceive or miscarriage.
Yeah. Wow.
And as difficult as it was, because you definitely have to, I joined the group, but I couldn't follow it because it would just pop up on my feed all the time. And I'm like, okay, I'm not in a place to read all of your stories while I'm going through mine. But at the same time, it gave me a place that I could talk about my grief with people who did understand. And one thing that was shared with me there, and y'all can find this on Google, on Pinterest. I could even share it in comments after the podcast airs. But the 10 Commandments after pregnancy loss. It really helped me. Someone gave me a list of the 10 things that you abide by after pregnancy loss that will help you grieve and repair your heart for that.
Oh, wow. Here.
And I think the thing that I clung to most was the number one rule, which is there's nothing wrong with your baby until the doctor says there is.
Oh, wow.
Just clinging to that rule and repeating that to myself within the first 8 weeks of that second pregnancy that I had, because we only made it to 7 weeks the first time, so of course I was terrified at that appointment for the second pregnancy that at 8 weeks there would be something wrong.
Yep.
Or that it wouldn't even be there. And for me, it has a lot to do with cognitive behavioral therapy. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but CBT, it works for a lot of people. And I feel like that's what I use to help train my brain in that instance of like, I understand that your anxieties are founded in things that are legitimate, but we have to manifest the things that we want for ourselves with positive energy as best we can. No, we can't control it in the outcome, but we can put that energy into a positive place for as long as we possibly can until we have a real reason to be scared or be upset. We think about all the things that could possibly go wrong in a situation for those of us that think that way. And it's our way of trying to preemptively prepare for the worst because we expect the worst to happen. And how sad that we live in a constant state of survival. That's what that is. It's a survival state. It's a survival tactic to help us feel as though we have some sort of control when we have none in reality. So if you can continuously tell yourself, there's nothing wrong with my baby until my doctor says there is. Because doctors get it wrong too.
They do.
So
all the time.
To just recognize that your energy and your thoughts have a lot of effect on not only your ability to succeed in life, in your career, in the things that you want, but in a fertility or pregnancy journey of your own, no matter what you're going through. As long as you can maintain those positive thoughts to help get you through to the next step, the next milestone, the next checkup, whatever that next is for you, just remind yourself there's nothing wrong until someone tells me there is.
That's kind of hard.
It's much harder. It's much easier said than done. But when you don't think that way, you put yourself through the pain of it twice. And honestly, it's so difficult for us to anticipate how things are really going to go anyway. So to put yourself through the pain of it over and over when it's going to go different anyway, it's not sensible.
Well, sorry, my son is losing his mind in the background.
You're doing great, bud.
He's doing amazing. These are not how the podcasts usually go. He actually was supposed to stay asleep very much longer. Daylight savings, sleep regression, all the things. But thank you so much for sharing your story. And he's still losing his mind. Being so vulnerable. I think even myself, I've learned so much. Because like the anxiety stuff, like putting down a wall and your partner being different, like those are things I never knew until you just told me. And so
maybe another day I would love to come back and talk with you more about some of those things, because they really intrigue me, and I have lots of podcast options for people to reference for that material. So
it's going to be amazing. You should definitely come back. We can go more in detail when my son is not losing his mind. Because I would love to learn more.
That'd be great.
Especially how you processed everything.
And thank you for giving me the opportunity to be so raw and vulnerable and tell my story.
Yeah, it was an amazing story. I mean, I even started crying too. And, it gets emotional. And I think the whole reason for this podcast is to be raw and let other moms know that they're not alone in this journey, and just learn tips and get advice from everything. And so next time you're on, we'll definitely go more in detail about everything, and maybe even have like a little series.
That'd be great.
That'd be amazing. Here comes my son.
Hey, baby.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.